Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to create a faux quilted look cover. Easy peasy. Even if you've never quilted, this is a no-brainer and it goes really fast. So if you're new here, my name is Jean and this is the Inky Studio, and I am going to be working on a sewing, needlework, embroidery kind of themed journal. And so I've just prepared this cover and I'm going to show you how I do that. Now I've demonstrated something like this before on my channel. It's been a while, so I am just going to go ahead and show you how I started that. So I have a piece of cardstock. Now I am using the 110 pound weight cardstock, but you could use the 65 weight as well. I like the 110. It gives a really firm cover, but the 65 cardstock is fine too. And I also am going to first of all put down this heat activated glue that you get. Now it comes under names like Heat and Bond, Wonder Under. Those are sort of the brand names this comes from, but it's a piece of like a parchment type paper, and there's this glue that's spun on here, and it will transfer to whatever you have underneath by your iron. And so I have cut a piece from that, and you buy it by the yard, and it comes in a bit of a roll. And it's usually wherever you see fabric for sale. No, a lot of Walmarts are no longer selling fabrics, but Joann's, Hobby Lobby, Michael's might, I don't know, but Hobby Lobby and Joann's are the two places I know you can find this. And I cut a piece that is just a little larger than the base I'm going to be putting it to. So just a little bit, just kind of goes over the edges. Before you iron anything, you really, this is very important so you don't ruin your ironing board, you need another piece of parchment paper. Now this, you might be able to also use wax paper would probably work, and also freezer paper with the shiny side up would work as well. And this is because you've cut this just a little bit bigger than your base, and that is to ensure that you cover all the way to the edge. And of course there's going to be some that the glue that's going to come over it. So by putting down this parchment paper, you don't have to worry about it getting anywhere else, and it lifts right off. And you can use this parchment paper over and over and over again. It won't stick to the parchment paper. When you peel this back, it'll stick back to the paper it came on, and so therefore you can use this multiple times. So you will do that. You will get this little sandwich all set up. You will take your dry iron. You don't want any steam on it. And you'll put it at the cotton setting, you know, high cotton setting is fine. And then you're going to go with your iron, and you're going to press it like my hand's the iron, right? So you're going to press it, and you're going to hold it for, you know, maybe the count of 3, and then the count of 3, and the count of 3, and you may have to go a little more, maybe the count of 5. Just go over it, and don't be too worried. I've never burnt this, so I've never had that kind of a problem. But if you're within 3 to 5 seconds on each spot holding it, you should be just fine. Then you can test a little bit and see, you know, is the glue transferring to my cardstock or not? And if it's not, then you just need to go over a little bit longer. I think what you'll find, or I usually find, is that the edges, I usually always have to go over the edges again, because somehow it doesn't get the full heat, I guess, when I go through it. But that's all you do to transfer the glue onto your cardstock. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Now I know I said to hold it down in each little section, but you may have to go and do that 3 or 4 times, not just one time where you hold it down, hold it down, hold it down. You may have to go around and just keep doing it. So you kind of let this area cool while you do it over here and over here, and just keep going around until you don't see too much puckering. Now there's going to probably be a little bit, but you try to get as much of this puckering out that you can. And then when you go to test the corners, if you see that the glue isn't quite transferring, right? And that's, I don't know if you can see this on camera. So you see how the glue is like here, I don't feel any more glue. It's not rough. Then I know that the glue is transferred. Okay, so that's what I've gone through. And here I need to do a little bit more ironing because you see the glue is sort of like stuck, like it's webbing. It's kind of stuck between the paper and the cardstock there. So I need to do that corner again, and that's what I mean. The corners just somehow tend to be a little bit more difficult. So let me just go back and do that one more time, and then we'll peel this back. Okay, before you peel off that sheet, I like to go and trim off the paper and the glue I didn't use, because this, otherwise you'll have these little fibers you have to kind of pick off or do something with them. Try to fold them back onto your sheet or something of that nature, because there is this leftover glue that's still on that part of the paper. So I'm just going to trim it off like that to kind of cut it all away. Makes it a little easier. I'm going to come down to here, and then I'm not going to cut the last little, I'm not going to cut that little last piece, because now I can take a hold of that, whoops, and peel off the paper. You can save this paper, and it's like a parchment paper that you can use if you're going to do smaller pieces anyways. You can do that. You can, if you want to. Now we have this, and it's not going to always be perfect, but it's going to be pretty much where the glue is on here. There's a few spots in here where it didn't melt as nicely as it could have, but it's still mostly already put in there, ready to be glued or ironed onto your cloth. Now for the cloth part of it, I took, fabric that I wanted to use in my quilt. And for this one, like this one here is a little bit more of a shabby chic style, and this one's going to be a little bit more of a vintage style, so I have a little bit more muted fabrics for this one. But I just took a piece of fabric and I just tore it up into squares. You can cut them up just into squares as well. You can cut them. That wouldn't be a problem. I tried to do all kinds of different shapes. So some are rectangular, big squares, little squares. These are a little bit, I tried to just vary the size and the shape of the square. I like using squares. I suppose you could do this other ways, but to me it's more reminiscent of quilting. So I just have all these little things already done up, and this is some spare here. And now what I'm merely going to do is I'm just going to start placing this onto the surface. And the only really rule that you want to follow is try to cover up all the glue that you can, and just play with it and just kind of see, where different pieces look good, where they don't look so good at, that type of thing. Sometimes I overlap the fabrics that are near it. Sometimes I overlap the fabric that I just put down. So I kind of like vary the different ways I overlap the other fabric, because you want to overlap it somewhat so you hide that glue portion of it. So you do want to overlap a little tiny bit, but you can just do it however you think you like to. And so that's kind of what I'm going to be doing here. And I also am trying to hang over the edge just a little bit, like, 1/8 of an inch. I'm hanging over that edge because I really want that glue to be covered with my laying down of squares. So I did want to point out a couple things, and that is you don't have to have even squares. Obviously, I'm not doing that. I like more of a random patchy type of look. But if you want, squares that are a little bit more uniform, then of course you'll have to cut them that way. And, just make sure that you allow a little bit to overlap. But I kind of like this patchwork. It's easy, it's fun, it's really quick, and it's very shabby, vintage, primitive type of a look to it. And so sometimes you'll get down to this point where, like here, I liked the patch up here. I wanted that color there, but the glue was was smaller than my patch, and I could, tear this up and make it fit, but I can also just lay that down like that. Don't worry about how much you have that's not glued and is laid over to the other piece of fabric, is what I'm trying to say. So as long as that piece of fabric has a little bit of glue underneath it, it's all fine. It's all good. And then like over here, I don't really want to tear up little tiny bits to kind of put in there. I'm just going to lay this right down like so. And as long as the glue's covered, and I might even put this little patch over it because I think I like that look a little bit better. So I've kind of like covered that area up. And I'm just going to continue to do that here and not worry too much about making sure that the whole fabric is covered with glue, because you don't have to do that. I am just putting things in here like that, and I think I've got this one more piece here. Now I might go ahead and just tear this down. Oops, here's another one. Oh, perfect. Okay. There we go. And that, to me, I'm happy with that. Don't overthink it too much. Now, I just want to make sure that, first of all, there is no glue showing up, right? The cloth is over everything, and that I'm over the edge, like there's a little bit here it's showing. Might have to come in a little bit like this. You might have to readjust some of these areas just a little bit there. I have a little bit coming over the edge at least. And yeah, this all looks fantastic. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our iron and we're going to put it the same setting, but we're going to add steam to it this time, because this time we do want the moisture. And if you could, if you just feel like you're not confident that all the glue is covered, I mean, I am pretty much here, but if you don't, you can take your parchment paper and put it over like this and iron over it. And this time we're going to hold it a little bit longer. You're going to hold it, I do believe the instructions say like count of 10 when you adhere the fabric to it. But you are going to hold it in place a little bit longer, but keep moving around, just keep and repeat over the same area, just keep moving around, repeat over the same area, and every so often check to see, how is that really adhering? And if it is, well, you're doing really well there. I guess one tip I want to mention is that this is more of a press and lift up motion. It's not like ironing something. It's pressing it down, lifting up, pressing it down, lifting up. It's more of that motion in the beginnings to get everything caught. And then once you know that it's caught really well, as you can see here, it's caught on that cardstock, then you can probably iron it traditional way a couple times. But it's in the beginning, it's more of a press and lift up, because we don't want to move our pieces around until they're all adhered here. Now, here's the thing too, that many people would do this, and they would do this with a glue stick. They wouldn't use the iron-on glue. They would just glue a little bit of the back and press it down all the way around. And I'm not saying that's a bad method at all, but what I like about this is, number one, I know I can sew on this without any problem with my machine, because this was designed to be sewn on. And I am just a little weary about glue, and I know people say they have no trouble with it, but the funny thing about the glue is that over time, if you sew with wet glue, it could build up over time. It won't like do it immediately. So I'm just a little leery of that. That's all, because it's so expensive to clean machines anymore. And so I do that because I feel confident with that. I also do it because it adds a little bit more uh, adhesion where the piece is like the piece is fully adhered, where with a glue stick it can be hit or miss. If you are going to sew on this, what you could do with a glue stick is glue just the middle, a little spot of glue in the middle of each piece, and lay them down. Press it so that the pieces are nice and flat, and then go ahead and do your sewing around it. That would work fine as well. But to me, this is fast. It's just so much faster to do it this way, because I can play with everything and not worry about having to glue it and think, well, I've glued it, but now I may have to adjust it. I may have to. So to me, this is just easy. It's just quick and easy. So that's just why I'm doing it this way. So now that we've finished all this, if you are not going to sew, then what you need to do then is these places where they've overlapped, you need to take your glue, just a little scuff of glue, and glue it down, right? Just a little scuff. Nothing, you know, like I'm using glitter glue. So use a good quality white glue, and then you'll need to glue down those little places like that if you're not going to sew on it. That's what I would suggest you do. And once you do that, this is really on here. It's not, they're not going to go anywhere. They're very good. Now once I've got all the glue down, I'm going to go around, I'm going to trim it like I did the last time. Just going to cut this off. And I like to go over the cardstock because then I know I'm all the way to the edge with my fabric. And you know what? You may not want to even cut this off. You may like to have a little bit of that hanging over. I mean, that could really make it even more grungy if that's the look you're going for. All right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing that I did on this one. That is, I'm going to sew around these squares, right? And I'm going to vary my stitch, but you might like the look of it all being zigzag. You might like it all being straight stitched. You know, it's up to you. I might, because this is more vintage, more grungy vintage, I might go ahead and zigzag it all. I used a contrasting thread, but you can use one that blends, and the color of gray, medium gray color, blends with almost everything. So if you want it to be, if you have lots of colors and you want it to blend, medium gray shade is really great for that. But whatever it is that you want to put down there, then that's what we'll do. And then when you get done, you're going to, and this has got some ink on here. I was doing some inking and I inked it up. What you'll end up with is this here on the back, all this lines. So now you probably don't want that to be showing in your inside. So now you could do two things. You could go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and put down my glue again. I'm going to iron on the glue just like I did the other side. I'm going to do that again just because it's easy and quick, and I think it just looks well sealed when I do that. But you could glue down paper on this side, glue down the paper and have that as your inside. And I like that idea. And of course you could use conventional glue, just regular glue, and glue down paper. I like the idea of putting paper on the inside because I can more easily attach things to it. But you could definitely put down a piece of fabric. So you could put down that iron on glue and then just iron on a piece of fabric, and that could be the inside too. It'd be very pretty, be very cool. So that's up to you, however you want to do that. I'm going to do mine with paper. And so I'm going to follow that same process, and I'll catch up with you when I get done. Here's another tip. You don't have to have a full sheet. You can use scraps, because as you cut into your Wonder Under or whatever it is, you're going to end up with scraps, like leftovers. So here was a leftover here, one is up here, and one is up here. And what I simply do in that case is I iron them one at a time. So I ironed on this one, and then I placed the other sheet, overlap just a little bit, and did this sheet, overlap this one a little bit, and did this sheet. And that's kind of the way you can just patch up on the pieces of Wonder Under that way, and you won't have to waste anything. So that's kind of, just wanted to mention that to you. And I'm going to go through here and cut this off like I did the last time. And the other tip too that I wanted to bring out is when you buy this type of product, this Heat and Bond or this Wonder Under, do not get the heavy duty. Only get the regular one, the light. Sometimes they call it the light, L-I-T-E. Don't get the heavy duty. That is not meant to be sewn. That's for decals or whatever. So make sure you don't get the heavy duty. All right. So there we go. That is done, and I did cut off my little tip, didn't I? All right. And so when you peel this off, there's going to be a little bit of this left over because you're overlapping the different pieces, but that's okay. Because it will just get, I just sort of rub it down inside because it'll get glued on there eventually. And I am going to use a digital, but you could use scrapbook paper, and of course you can use your cloth. You could use jeepers. You can even use like a grocery bag if you really wanted a super grungy look. And I have I do not have a borderless printer, so I have to cut the edges off, which, you know, always leaves a little bit here. And I don't like to cut the cover down because it's the exact, I don't have to cut the paper then because it all fits in there perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 sheets and I'm going to glue them together, and I'm going to have them meet in the middle. So I will iron on one side, and then I'll butt this up against that there and iron this side down. And if I get, we'll see how it goes. If I become annoyed by this seam, I can put some lace down here. I can put a strip of fabric or whatever. So that's how I'm going to get around not having a borderless printer. So those of you who have the same dilemma, this might be a solution for you. And let me get that done. Alrighty, so I've ironed these on. This looks wrinkled, but it's not. It's in the digital itself, but it is on there quite smooth and everything has good contact. And of course, where you put the little stitching, there might be a little bit of roughness in that area because it's a little bit raised, but it all has really good contact. And I'm not going to fold this yet. I'm going to just wait and see how it goes. I might put 2 signatures in here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing yet. But yeah, before you sew your signature in, of course, you'll have to fold it. But I'm just going to wait on that. And I stitched all the way around it. Now, I don't think that would be necessary if you used the Wonder Under and everything. I just did it because I think it finished the look off a little bit. So there you go, and there's the cover, and I hope that seemed simple to you because it is. You know, once you do it one time, it'll just be a no-brainer. You might want to start out with just like, you know, a half a sheet of cardstock and a little bitty piece, you know, a few pieces on there, and start experimenting how that's going to go before you do your actual cover you want. And that way, You can also experiment with the look of different stitches, how you like it, or whatever, and you can save that little sample uh, for future reference. So that might be a good way to start if you've not done this before, just to kind of get you acquainted with the process. So I hope that was helpful, and please subscribe so that you can see how I go about filling up this journal. And I don't know if I'll be doing both on film, because I am doing like a grungy vintage, plus I'm doing this more shabby chic one. But please join me next time, and we'll continue this little journey. Have a crafty day. Bye.